So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome along to the next in a series of online events hosted by IFB. This one's particularly around cybersecurity and looking at cybersecurity certification, actions, strategies, and responses, and how you should be managing cybersecurity threats within your business, particularly as an SME. We're delighted in this session that we're joined by Adam Pilton from Cybersmart. He's IFB's. Well, he's not particularly. There's a big team in Cybersmart, but he's one of the lead. Well, you'll give yourself your title in a second, Adam. But Adam's been great in terms of getting us here, and this thinking is working between IFB and Cybersmart, and it's great to be part of Cyber Scotland Week as well. So, my name's Graham Gordon. I'm going to be the host for the next 30 minutes or so. Our company is a managed IT services provider, and we do connectivity, security, phone systems. Boring old phone systems are still in the go, and they do get compromised now and again, and cloud services as well. As I say, we formed a partnership, and partnerships are very important to us because we ourselves are an SME, very important to ourselves in how we grow our business and deliver services for our customers. And Adam Pilton, you can see he's a senior cybersecurity consultant at Cybersmart. Adam, welcome. Good afternoon. Maybe a little bit about Cybersmart, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself, please.
Yeah, certainly. So, hello. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Graham. And the title is always a bit of a tongue twister for people. It is a long one, isn't it? I've got my money's worth there with the 4 words in it. Cybersmart, as you can see on the screen, all-in-one cybersecurity monitoring, optimization, training, and insurance solution, which in effect, our aim is to give you complete cyber confidence. So to break that down a little bit more, I imagine most people have heard of Cyber Essentials. And if you haven't, you're in the right place, because I think we're going to talk about it a little bit more detail today. But essentially, we are the number one certification body in the UK. We provide the largest amount of certifications across the UK, with over 10% of Cyber Essentials coming through us. We have a tool that allows you to easily achieve Cyber Essentials by going through us or through FIB, ultimately coming through Cybersmart. Then you can quickly and efficiently complete the application or assessment form. But then it's about making sure you maintain that compliance. So we give you a tool that helps you monitor and then optimize. So making sure your devices are up to date and that you've got all the policies in place that you should have, as well as providing you with cybersecurity training. And again, the insurance piece we'll come on to at the end. But with Cybersmart and IFB, if you work with us to achieve Cyber Essentials, rather than getting the £25,000 insurance that you'd receive going through the traditional route through IASME, you receive £100,000. So Cybersmart essentially is there to give you complete cyber confidence.
And I think that, and thanks for that. I think our introduction to Cybersmart is we use you guys to be certified. You know, we're, to coin the American phrase, we're eating our own dog food in this instance, and working with you guys. And it works really well because we're a tech company. That doesn't mean we know everything about cybersecurity. And it is a specialism like any other specialism in any business. And if it's not taken care of correctly by professionals, it's a challenging thing. And it's the whole package. It wasn't just for us to get the piece of paper and achieve it once and then forget about it. Operationally, as a business, we live and breathe this much more than we've ever done before. We've been in this space for 20 years, but 5 years in cybersecurity, and it's really helped finding a partner who talks our language. And I think that's a really important part, Adam, that we shouldn't overlook. We know that we have Ryan as our account manager, but we've got specialists like you on hand who can come and help with the most complicated of issues, and that's pre-certification or pre-breach or compromise, but also post-breach and compromise. And that £100,000 insurance is really invaluable. Tell us a little bit about you, Adam. Why are you here? What's got you involved in cybersecurity? Why has this happened for you?
Yeah, certainly. So my background is actually in law enforcement. So I was in the police as a police officer for 15 years. And latterly, I moved into cybercrime. So back in 2016, I moved across to the cybercrime team as a detective. I worked as a Bobby on the beat before that. I worked in CID as a detective and moved in to cybercrime, started working with the cybercrime team, conduct investigations there, and ultimately got promoted into that team. So the team that I led was known as the Covert Operations Management Unit, and they consisted of 3 distinct teams. So as I mentioned, the cybercrime team, who are responsible for investigating cybercrime, as it was reported in through Action Fraud, but also for helping with digital inquiries in more traditional investigations. So whether that be a harassment or whether that be a murder, there are always going to be digital lines of inquiry. So understanding those and being able to obtain those evidentially so they can be presented in court was a real critical factor. The other teams, as part of the commune, was the Covert Authorities Bureau. Now, the Covert Authorities Bureau was responsible for obtaining authorities in relation to covert activities. So you may have heard of RIPA or IPA, so the Investigatory Powers Act, which is commonly referred to as Theresa May's Snoopers Charter. So working with that legislation to make sure the activities that we were conducting, whether it be traditional, on the ground, covert activity or potentially hacking, in order to achieve legal or investigatory objectives, we use those authorities. And the final team were the communications data investigators. Now, they are responsible for obtaining communications data from the likes of Facebook, Google, but then more locally, maybe a BT landline provider or O2 cellular provider, and even maybe potentially companies like yourself, Graham, whereby we obtain that information to further investigation. And I often describe it to people, that role as working like on the program Hunted, whereby we spend a lot of our time using digital resources to try and locate people, whether that be for their own welfare because they're missing, or whether that be because they're a criminal and they're wanted for some reason.
And that transfer from legislation very much being aware of and embracing and having to take control of cybersecurity and everything you just touched, is that whole level of forensics have moved into that digital space that are not just about digital crimes, but as you say, also physical crimes as well. And that's an important part of what we're going to speak about today, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly that. I think the perspective that I've got on things is maybe slightly different than some people in the industry in terms of, for me, the why. I've seen firsthand the victims, whether they be individuals, whether they be businesses, or even the people within the business that's maybe made a mistake. But I've seen those people. So for me, the why, I can clearly see why cybersecurity is important. I try and relay that rather than simply or purely using statistics. I can give you that understanding of examples that I've seen firsthand.
Yeah, real world stuff always is invaluable, absolutely invaluable. Thank you for that. So, the running order for today, I mean, we're going to loosely stick to this. I mean, we're going to think about this in terms of challenges, strategies, insights, cyber essentials, and key takeaways. We've really designed it as being conversational, and that's between Adam and myself. I did promise him a fireside chat today, so I thought it'd be a romantic view across the loch that gets everybody much more relaxed. The other view was a cup of coffee next to a roaring fire. So we're coming into spring. We've collected the driftwood. We're now going to shoot the breeze and learn more about cybersecurity. There's also the opportunity, if you're watching us online right now and live, you can post some questions through the chat system. Jan, as our producer, she's going to be managing that as well for us. So we'll get to some of your questions as we go through it. So Adam, I'll maybe go into that security is too difficult. Security is not for me. I've got some software on my laptop that stops me getting hacked. I've got a firewall. All those challenges are behavioural. But starting at the top with that cost one, I mean, really, our purpose as IFB is to maximise and support our customers' uptime. And because downtime is way more expensive than uptime. So when budget comes into that. So really to lead us through these, budget and time are very closely focused for many SMEs. Why do you think it's at the top of the list? Why do you think the perception of these being the biggest challenges? Or do you think these are real?
Yeah, no, certainly. They are very real. I think the cost of living crisis is impacting everyone. And that's clear to see. The news we watch and our day-to-day lives, everything is costing more. And we've seen as well from surveys that we've conducted that 40% of employee salaries have stayed the same or reduced during this cost of living crisis. So it's really important that the budgets that we do have, that they're spent correctly. And there is increased scrutiny around that. And it's completely right to have that scrutiny. We need to make sure we're spending the money correctly. And going with the whole budget thing, as you say, it's tightly tied into time. With budgets being tight and staff maybe being less in surplus as they were before, we have more responsibilities, increased tasks to do. So it's a case of balancing what is right to do. So I think budgets, and although we've seen from surveys we've conducted that businesses are actually increasing their budget for cybersecurity, what we're actually seeing is that they've got this budget, but then it's determining how to spend it to get the best value for them. Because I mean, I don't know about you, Graham, but I know I've got a phone in my pocket right now, and it's a fantastic phone, and it does all these amazing things, but I probably use it for about 30-40% of what it can do. And it's the same with security tools. There's these security tools out there which are absolutely fantastic, but rather than paying for that security tool, is it worth considering what do I need to achieve and what tool do I need to simply achieve that, and then reducing that spend and getting a tool that's actually right for you. That's the kind of thing that we need to be looking at.
And that takes you to one of your points there in terms of a clear plan. Nobody. I mean, I hate saying it. Nobody plans to fail, but you fail to plan. There's not if you don't know what you're trying to stop, or likewise, if you don't know what you're trying to protect, if you don't know what your digital estate looks like and how many doors or windows or holes there are, you're throwing money. You will be spending money in the wrong way and in the wrong volume.
Yeah, and you're spot on there. I think with the whole a clear plan, that the strategy, which is so important, it's got to be clearly defined. So you need to know what success is, and even if success is after year one, we've achieved Cyber Essentials, then that is the plan, and then you build on it from there. And what the National Cybersecurity Centre recently told us is that the people that go through Cyber Essentials, over 60% of them have actually learned something. And for me, cybersecurity is all about learning, because there is never an end goal. You will never meet anybody in cybersecurity that knows it all, because in 2022, they could have claimed to know it all, and then 23 comes along, and all of a sudden AI explodes. So it's a completely different landscape now.
And just on that topic of AI, it wouldn't be a tech webinar or podcast if we didn't talk about AI. I was speaking to a friend the other day, and I likened AI to most users. AI is going to be a little bit of a microwave. You're going to use the basic functions in it for 3 minutes every now and again to reheat chili or pizzas or cook whatever. But the capability of AI is going to be hugely leveraged by criminals. But at the same time, are you seeing that same impact from the defence side of things in terms of cybersecurity? Is it becoming much more prevalent and wider used within your space?
Yeah, so in terms of the defence, then yes, there's lots of conversation around it, and you can see now people are trying to implement AI into their products, which is absolutely fantastic. The tricky thing with AI when you're using it for defending, or to be fair, when we're using it in a business for non-criminal purposes, is we have to be so careful with the information we're putting in. So if you're using ChatGPT, for example, or Gemini, whatever you're using, the information you put in, as soon as you hit that button, it's lost. So we cannot put sensitive information in there. So it's making sure that when we're using AI, we are using it safely.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, that if you're not paying for something, you are the product. And it's never been more relevant than AI, that if I'm putting a search in there, or if I'm dumping a piece of code from a firewall or a router in here to debug it, that configuration is then lost. It's in that AI tool, and to do with whatever it wants to do with, or to be exploited and however it can be exploited, I suppose, is the challenge there. So it's that lack of threat awareness. Is how do you stay on top of that? How do you trust? I suppose we're getting into trust and metrics. We talked about plan, but if you're aware of what your vulnerability is, what are the sort of metrics that you should be trusting in your business? What are the ones you feel are core to that, Adam?
Yeah, so I think in terms of that whole trust piece there, you want to be having policies in place so that everybody knows what the baseline is. So in the example we just given, do not put sensitive information into any AI products you use. So you've got that core baseline there, so everyone knows what's right and wrong. And then if other people are seen in the business to be doing that, then at least they can be flagged up and educated if that's what's needed. But for me, I think for the trust piece, we need to make sure that trust is coming from all angles. So I know recent survey that Cybersmart conducted with SensorsWide, and I keep referencing this survey. So what I'll do, Graham, is afterwards I'll send you the report, and then you can share it with people on this call, because there's a lot of information there that's really quite valuable.
Thank you.
But going back to that survey, so we found that actually lots of business leaders, so UK SMEs business leaders, decision makers, lots of them really lack trust in their employees. So we found that 17% of them thought that their employees would seek to harm the company's reputation. 20% said they'd look to steal or believe they steal sensitive data. And 22% believe that employees would do something harmful, like clicking on phishing links. So there's a real lack of trust from the top down. And the only way for me that we can actually correct that is to make sure that training is in place, and then people are going through that training. And then as soon as we start seeing the training or the effects of the trainings, so incidents being reported, and we start seeing the MFAs in place across 100% of our systems, then that is when that trust starts coming together. And for me, that trust is really key, particularly in the current climate we're in.
I think that challenge is, it's all behavioural. Without a doubt, if you put all that together and try to summarise it in one word, what are the behaviours we need to undertake? And I think that one of the things as an SME operator, okay, we're in this space, is not sticking out that general email to say somebody did something today, so please don't do it again. There's no harm in sitting down with somebody and saying, look, this is what went wrong. This is why we think it went wrong, and this is what you need to not do again and do again. And that's training, awareness, all these things, and that's really important. So, in strategies, in terms of how do you cope with these? What are your coping mechanisms moving forward? Talked about priorities and budgets, and training again is right in the middle of that. And there is a reason it's in the middle of these 3 points here. I know that. Talk us through this in terms of we're working together with a customer, and then we're talking about that priorities, and that's really that plan. Where do you start with that conversation?
So for me, it's important to understand, and then the client may not always know this, and that's why it's important to have a conversation with someone like yourself, Graham, who does understand. So you need to understand, if you lost a certain item of your IT, what would be the impact of that? So say, for example, you've got a server, your business got a server, and everyone is connected to that server to obtain information from it. If that server went down because there was a flood, and it was impacted by that flood, what would be the impact to your business? Would that mean nobody could work for the day? And how many days would that last? So understanding what's important to your business, it could even be Microsoft 365, everyone uses that. Understanding what's important to your business, why it's important, and the impact of that going down for any period of time, whether that be minutes, hours, days, weeks, would be, then you can begin to plan. So in the example of the server, well, then you have a secondary backup server sat somewhere far away from the current one and at a higher location, so it couldn't be flooded. So you have backup plans, and that will make sure that when you're creating your plan and you're looking at your budget, that you can make a clear plan, a clear strategy, but also justify the budget where purse strings are a little bit tighter than maybe they have been previously.
And we've got a couple of questions coming through on the chat. We'll get to those in a second. But in that instance, where we're seeing with customers that you're setting your priorities for that backup server or that data backup platform, but also test it. If it's that much of a priority and you wait 9 months to test that recovery process, it doesn't make sense to us. It's a big thing that we build into what we're doing and that should be fixed into the budget. It should be, if you're signing up for 12 months of this service and it should be ongoing, we should be building in, as a provider, rebuilding that test environment to give you confidence and trust that if you need to come and restore that server to somewhere else, it's going to work.
Yeah, exactly that. And also vulnerability scanning as well. I know another service that you guys support. So having the server in a secure environment and having the backup is fantastic, but then maintaining the security, maintaining those defenses, testing those defenses to understand what needs to be done to keep it at that secure level is really important. And that's something, again, should be factored in, scheduled in, and budgeted for.
Yeah, and that implementation of MFA, multi-factor authentication and strong passwords. We were laughing about that. Well, maybe you were laughing at me. I'm not sure. But how often do you change your password? If we went back, maybe at the start of computers, at start of computer networks, and there are very few people in the world currently who are 50 and under who've been trained how to use a laptop or a PC or a Mac. No, there's very little training going on. So what does a strong password look like? And, we must change our password every 30 days or 90 days. Those days have changed, haven't they?
Yeah, no, for sure, that is very much the case. So in terms of what does a strong password look like, so Cyber Essentials and the National Cybersecurity Centre advise that either we look at a 12-character password or that we look at an 8-character password with MFA. And the actual construction of the password itself, we're looking at 3 random words. So maybe traditionally people would have used family members' names, pet names with the numbers for date of birth, or even going down to terrible things such as password 1 with an exclamation mark. No longer can we do that. We have to use 3 random words, and those random words can be as simple as spinning around in your chair and just picking out 3 random things that you can see in your room. But what I would say in terms of passwords, password managers make things so much easier. You have to remember 1 password to access your password manager, and then once you're in, it can create passwords that we could never even remember, and it does it all for us. So using a password manager is key. And we touched on. Oh, sorry, Karen.
No, go, please carry on.
I was just going to say about MFA. We touched on MFA, so multi-factor authentication, or 2FA, it's sometimes referred to. So this is having different forms of a way of identifying. So a password would be 1 factor, but then the additional factors, the multiple factors. This could be something something you are. So something you are could be your biometrics. So it could be looking at your fingerprints or looking at your face ID. But most commonly what we're seeing is that people are using authenticator apps. So I imagine most people would have heard of the Microsoft Authenticator app or even the Google Authenticator, whereby you connect your that app, your device, by scanning a QR code. And then every time you go to log in, you get a pop-up saying, what's the code on your phone? And then you'd be given a 6-digit code that you can enter. And it's that factor is something that you have. So that's something that you have on you, and being your mobile phone.
Yeah, I think for me, a mobile phone is probably the biggest enabler. If it itself is secured, it's the biggest enabler for security in business and in life if it's used in that way. A couple of questions. I'll maybe take one from Malcolm. So thanks for the question, Malcolm. How do you work up your training? Starting perhaps with Cyber Essentials, then some immersive training and ongoing mentoring, all subject to robust feedback. Maybe just before I get to you, Adam, as part of our subscription, as part of our work with Cybersmart, we've got little nuggets of training videos that sit in all the team's desktops. And it's that ongoing training library that is, that doesn't mean we shirk our cybersecurity to Cybersmart. We're responsible for running a secure company. But the training videos that we get are all bite-sized, in time, available to us. So that's one element of it that we really enjoy through the subscription we have with you guys by being Cyber Essentials Plus certified with you. So part of that subscription gives us £100,000 worth of insurance cover in case something goes wrong, but also real-time ongoing video learning and training classes or training on our desktops. That's really handy for a small company. And it gamifies it a little bit because I know Jana, who's producing today, and also Keith, I've got the leaderboard, and I'm not going to tell you where I'm going to sit in the leaderboard. The amount of videos consumed, amount of training video hours consumed. I should be at the top, obviously, but I'm really heartened to say that my team are as secure as I need to be. So that's fantastic. Adam, beyond that, in terms of, we're back to budget and time. I mean, how much effort do you see from SMEs going into that training and immersive training side of things?
Yeah, so I think it is a really important factor, and what you touched on there, Graham, is for me that's number one. You have to have something in place that everyone's doing, so you've got that consistency of training. But outside of that, I would say it's important to consume information, whether that be news or blogs. And I'd probably go with blogs, so you can read a consistent blog. And I know the National Cybersecurity Centre have got a blog they post, but also Cybersmart. Myself, I post out a blog every month, Cybersmart. And I know, so I've had a look, Graham, I also do blogs. So it's important to consume information that way. In terms of the immersive side of things, that I would then look to instant response planning. So it's all well and good having policies in place, but it's really important to actually test those policies and make sure that A, people understand them, but B, they actually work for your company. Because quite often with policies, we'll get them, we'll read them, and they make complete sense when we read them. But it's only when you're in the middle of that attack or in the middle of that incident that you actually read the finer details and have to put it into action, and you realize, oh, I need A to be able to achieve B and C, and I don't have A. So it's really important to test your incident response procedure and other procedures.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that is we're compelled to test the fire alarm once a month. We're not compelled to tell us our cybersecurity in any shape, manner, or form, and I think that's wrong. Maybe some insights in terms of trends and advances within cybersecurity and threats. The slides on the screen right now. Which of these areas do you see that we should be paying attention to? I mean, I think use of AI. I mean, everybody calls it a little bit like whack-a-mole. You should be aware of it, but what do you do? And that's going to be driven in hand by quantum computing because everything gets smarter. But what do you, out of these 5 points, 6 points in here, what would you want to focus on? Tell us more about here, Adam.
Yeah, so I think for me, point 3 there, attacks focusing on the human element, because that is the one element that we can directly control ourselves, and lots of attacks are successful because of the human element. So we've got all these technological controls or technical controls in place, and they're fantastic and they do their job. So often the weaker link can be the human. So it's important to, as we've discussed, train yourself, consume information, but by understanding what the latest threats are. And this touches slightly on AI at this point, but understanding the latest threats. So the fact that now voices can be perfectly recreated by AI. So I don't know right now if I'm actually speaking to Graham, or if Graham's on the beach, really next to that log fire. And this is an AI video. We saw only a couple of weeks ago, someone was fooled by an AI video where they were invited to a meeting. They went to that meeting with their boss, and in that meeting were other people. And they interacted with these people via a video meeting. And in that meeting, he was told by his boss he had to transfer $25 million. End of the meeting comes and transferred $25 million. And it was all found to be AI that created that. So the attacks are becoming more sophisticated. And just by understanding that that is a possibility means that when we come off those meetings and we're not 100% sure, we can put in other measures. So that could be things like just a quick phone call to your boss or verifying the real person that you're actually stood next to.
And we're usually more exploited. I mean, it's usually the human element that is exploited, as you say, because we're inherently trustworthy of each other. And I think, especially if your boss and the board around the table, and it's not an insignificant sum, so you think that severity is quite impactful. So the human element, it ties into planning, it ties into awareness, it ties into education. One point you've got on here about certification. Rachel's asking a question. Do you think the UK and Scottish governments should set legislation making it obligatory for all staff working in businesses with IT systems have training in cybersecurity? Now, we know in Scotland, I'm not sure of England too much, but we can't compete for a public sector piece of business unless we are, I think now, Cyber Essentials Plus certified. It has to be coming. There has to be stronger legislation coming in terms of just not IT companies, but anybody operating. You've got a health and safety policy. You have to have health and safety insurance. You've got to do a health and safety audit. Can you see a day soon in the horizon that you've got to do the same thing for cyber?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it is coming. And as you mentioned, so the UK government, back in October, released this procurement policy, essentially saying because of the increased risk of supply chain attacks, it's really important now that within contracts, people are stipulating that there needs to be cybersecurity controls in place, and that Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, having those and referencing those and the ongoing compliance to those standards is sufficient. And as you pointed out, if you want to obtain a government contract, then you need to have Cyber Essentials in place. And it's only a matter of time, in my opinion, that becomes standard. We're seeing at the moment businesses looking, before they partner with people, before they actually work with other organizations, that they are looking for those cybersecurity controls. Those questions are being asked. And then in my day-to-day job, I see people that need to obtain Cyber Essentials really quickly because they've got a deadline for a contract. So it makes sense. It's a competitive advantage. It really does add value to get things like Cyber Essentials in place now. And as you say, I can only see cybersecurity being mandated by businesses. Like you say, health and safety. That's a really good example.
Yeah. I mean, we feel that way as well. So we're going to run over by 5 minutes, which is good because I control the timer. Well, actually, Yana controls the timer, so that's where we're at. And I think we've had some good questions from the floor. We're into the sort of last 3 slides now, meaningful slides. What advice? We're talking about cyber essentials again, and it is about understanding that question. I mean, the first step, the cyber essentials part, is pretty simple to go through, but understanding what that question means rather than overly complicating it sometimes. I think people think it's a very, very technical thing, cyber essentials, but it's actually more about your business operations at that level. It moves into technicalities when we're into essentials. Do you see that sometimes puts people off in terms of what we're saying there?
Yeah, certainly. So it's really worth highlighting that Cyber Essentials is a self-assessment. So with Cyber Essentials, you have to have controls in place and you have to declare that you've got these controls in place. But the Cyber Essentials Plus is all about verifying. So someone will actually check you've got controls in place. And the controls they're looking at you've got firewall, secure configuration, user access controls, which we mentioned at the bottom of the slide here, malware protection and patch management. But the one thing I'd say with Cyber Essentials, obviously, you will want to be able to achieve Cyber Essentials. It would probably make sense to work with someone like yourself, Graham, that knows and understands the technology. But it's really important to keep it simple. So many times when we're looking at Cyber Essentials assessments, people may not fully understand the question. And that's where, obviously, advice from the likes of yourself, Graham, comes in. But then answering the questions, keep it simple. So one example I often refer to is the unlocking of devices. It's a simple question within the self-assessment. How do you unlock devices? What controls do you have in place? And the answer is essentially looking for the fact that, like mobile phones, for example, you've got minimum of 6-digit pins in computers purely to unlock the computer, not to access anything within it, but to unlock the computer. They're looking for passwords. Again, it can be a 6-digit pin or it could be a 6-digit password. But it's very simple information. But quite often people get bogged down with then trying to show that they've got security in place way beyond the question, and then it becomes very confused and quite often conflicting with other answers. So keep it simple is certainly my advice, and keep updated, as in terms of the operating systems that you're using, the products you're using.
I think that slide and what you've said and maybe moving into this slide as we start to conclude is really important because, well, I don't have a password policy in my company. Your password policy can be as simple as, for my mobile phones, I carry a 6-digit alphanumeric passcode, and to unlock any laptop or PC on my network, I do the same. And these are and that could be your password policy. How you generate the password forms part of that, but it can be very simple statements rather than it being, I need to go and invest in a password generator. It doesn't need any of that. It's your it's your policy, it's your company policy. That is it good enough to get you through Cyber Essentials Plus? Bear that in mind, but it can be that simple.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then it goes back to that initial point you made, doesn't it? It's a case of understanding where the threats are, understanding what the budget is, and like you say, there's no reason you cannot just complete a policy that says exactly what you've just said, and then issue that to your staff and make sure your staff have seen that, read it, understood it, and then comply with it. Don't need to spend a fortune achieving Cyber Essentials at all.
Yeah, good, thank you. I mean, 10 points in the slide that you put together. I think the customer confidence and retention is a massive one for any SME. I mean, you could say it for any business. We want to provide a service and get paid for it, as most SMEs do. I'm sure most companies do. But I think that these steps here are all really, really, really important for any operating SME. And what we're going to do off the back of this is make the slide deck here available for people to have a look at and come back and ask more questions on, because, you know, the conversation today has been great and we've managed to take some questions through here. Anything one in here? I mean, the trust and credibility is an enormous one. That's an internal one with your teams. It's also an external one with your supply chain and your customers.
Yeah, definitely. And then that's the one I'd probably call out. I think in the current climate we're at, where trust is a commodity, really. It's hard to be trusted, but you want to be able to show that. So having something like Cyber Essentials in place, it gives you the confidence, it gives your staff the confidence and trust in the organisation that you're protecting your own data internally, But also, as we spoke about earlier, with the increased risk of supply chain attacks, with the wanting to work with government, with wanting to work with other organizations, being able to demonstrate that you have got the basics in place with something like Cyber Essentials and that you're
Absolutely.
maintaining that really does buy that trust.
Yeah, and it's a skill set internally, that internal trust as well. People will be more confident in their roles the more they're exposed to it, discussed with. There's a safe place to talk about. We've got a couple of slides left, and we've done. And Adam, thank you for the conversation. It's been great today. I really appreciate it. For us, Cyber Essentials is a no-brainer. You can go and try it now within the next 10 minutes and realise how much you actually know about your business. And also what your vulnerabilities are pretty quickly. That will upskill your business in its understanding, but it's also, as you put in here, it won't break the bank. Going off and trying that, nobody's judging you. Nobody knows what's going on. It's not external. You can go and try that free of charge and pretty quickly.
Yeah, certainly. And so Cyber Essentials, I always say to people, it's essentially removing you from being the low-hanging fruit. And I've seen time and time again that the people that are the low-hanging fruit, cyber criminals do target them because it's easy and they can get, even if it's just a few £1,000s, it's a few £1,000s for a few minutes work. So ensuring that you're not the low-hanging fruit, and by achieving Cyber Essentials, will do that, means that you are in a better position, and then you build from that. As we mentioned before, people learn from going through this process, and that really is the key.
Yeah. Just in our last slide then, another question. Rather than the burden of legislation, should we look at some sort of digital identity initiatives, which New Zealand, for example, have shown work rather better in promoting and invigorating the supply chain? Maybe just before I come to you in that one, we're based in the northeast of Scotland. We have an amazing industry offshore in terms of energy and onshore in terms of agri. Unless there's government compliance introduced in there, yes, I get it's a burden, but things don't improve. That's a personal point of view rather than in a statement. I think that there does need to be a degree of legislation that is not overly onerous but protects everybody, because if the digital incentives in that space, I get it works somewhere else. I think my gut feeling is it's a bit more challenging to make that work here.
Yeah, certainly. I think for me, with cybersecurity, it's, as much as it may not feel like it, it's a new world we're entering. It's still very, very early days in the grand scheme of things. But what I would say is that I think a little bit of everything is what is needed. So we need the government to impose regulations, but we also need ourselves to take responsibility and look at what we can do. So whether that's looking at frameworks like the NIST cybersecurity framework, and taking what suits us from that to improve our security, then I think anything you can do is certainly going to be of benefit, because the ultimate goal is to secure yourself and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a mix. It's a bit of a hybrid. I think we've got a challenge sometimes in society that as an employer, we've got user rights or employee rights as equally weighted as employer rights. As employment contracts have always been in favour of the employee in the UK. I think that I don't think there's any or very many successful employers in the SME space that abuse those rights. And the same in here. We've got to participate actively, but I think sometimes we need a nudge, we need a bar, we need to reach. So the conclusion slide. Get the basics in place and the process. The technology works. I think regardless of what you want to do security-wise, there is a technology product for you. But if you put the technology first, I think you're going to right to what you said at the start, Adam. We feel that customers are overspending and under-delivering if they put technology first. And that comes back to your point about having a strategy.
Yeah, certainly. And I think we mentioned trust a few times, and I often refer to this when I talk, but having trust in someone like yourself, Graham, small business coming to you, I can trust you to implement or help me implement cybersecurity, knowing that you've got the knowledge to be able to do that, but also you know how to use the tools efficiently and effectively to achieve the aims. So I think for me, it's really important to have that strategy, have that early doors conversation, do something like Cyber Essentials so you understand what your business needs, and then create a clear plan. And of course, it's going to evolve, it's going to change as time goes by, but having that clear plan, at least for the short term, will ensure that you can work towards something. When you get there, you can review it and then make the next step. But it's got to be ongoing, and there has to be a plan, a strategy.
Absolutely. So from that point of view, I think trust and proof and trust that comes through it all. We needed to update that, but we'll move on. Adam, that's been great chat. We scheduled 30 minutes, but I think the conversation lended itself much better to what we've just done just now. We've had some great questions and we didn't get around to all of them. Thank you for that. We continue working in Cyber Scotland Week, but we are working with Cybersmart on an ongoing basis as IFB and very much in partnership with them to deliver better security for our customers. So Adam, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.